Tennessee retirement can mean cutting your monthly expenses to almost nothing. Not by moving to Alaska, not by living in a van, by picking the right town in Tennessee. Here's what nobody tells you about off-grid living. It's not about going primitive, it's about finding the loopholes. Tennessee has towns where you can legally build a house without a single state inspection, where your property taxes can hit $200 a year instead of $2,000, where land costs less than a used Honda. We're talking about 12 specific towns where the math actually works, where you can buy acreage for under $15,000, drill a well for $4,000, slap up solar panels without permits, and watch your monthly nut shrink to basically nothing. Here are 12 Tennessee towns where you can live off-grid for almost free. Atwood. Atwood sits in Carroll County, West Tennessee, 1.17 acres for $11,999, not per acre, total, with owner financing available. Carroll County is opt-out. The local government formally voted to exempt itself from Tennessee's state building codes. You don't need foundation inspections, framing inspections, or final inspections. You can build with straw bales, earth bags, rammed earth, whatever. No zoning, no time limits on how long you can sit on raw land before building. No restrictions on living in an RV while you save up for materials. Median property tax, $589 per year, 5th lowest in the state. The land is flat West Tennessee bottomland. Installing a solar array doesn't require engineering a custom mount. Running gray water drainage doesn't mean fighting gravity. Linden. Linden sits in Perry County between the Buffalo River and the Tennessee River. Population density is 20 people per square mile. 4.5-acre woodland tracts run $30,900. 5 acres go for $40,000. Riverfront lots start at $37,000. Perry County is in opt-out status. Median property tax hits $660 annually. The river access matters because Tennessee follows regulated riparianism for surface water. If you own land on a stream or river, you can draw water from it for reasonable agricultural use. No permit, no meter. Rainwater catchment handles most needs in a state getting 50 to 67 inches of rain yearly. But if you hit a dry spell, you've got flowing surface water as backup. Linden has under 1,000 people. Nobody's organizing a zoning board. Oneida. Oneida sits in Scott County, which calls itself the Free State of Scott. That nickname comes from the Civil War, when the county tried to stay neutral and declare independence from both the Union and Confederacy. The attitude stuck. 11-acre tracts sell for $69,000. 20.57 acres go for $139,900. These are massive unimproved tracts east of Highway 27 with road access and enough space to disappear. Median property tax, $616 per year. Scott County is opt-out, but here's what makes it different. The unrestricted designation shows up constantly in land listings. Unrestricted doesn't just mean no building codes, it means no deed covenants, no homeowner association, no private restrictions saying you can't have chickens or park an RV. When you see unrestricted near Oneida, you're looking at land where you can legally live in a camper while you construct a 200 square foot tiny house, keep goats, let your kid run a dirt bike track in the back 40, or whatever. The only limits are state and federal law. The county doesn't care. Nobody wrote extra rules. Big South Fork Medical Center in Oneida is a critical access hospital, 25 beds, 24/7 emergency care. That matters when you're 45 minutes from Knoxville. You're not betting your life on a volunteer ambulance crew with a 2-hour transport time. The topography is the Cumberland Plateau. Higher elevation, cooler summers, rockier soil. You're not growing acres of corn, but you can run orchards, pasture sheep and goats that handle rough terrain better than cattle, plant market gardens in raised beds, and sell at Knoxville farmers markets an hour away. 20 acres means your nearest neighbor could be half a mile off. You're not hearing their dogs. You're not smelling their burn pile. You're just alone. The land itself tells a story. Scott County lost population over the last 30 years as timber jobs dried up and young people moved to cities. That depressed prices. Landowners are happy to sell acreage to anyone who'll take it. That's your advantage. What looks like decline to economists looks like opportunity if you're trying to live cheap. Jamestown. Jamestown sits in Fentress County on the Cumberland Plateau right next to Scott County. Same rock, same trees, similar culture, different price point. 8.01 acre wooded parcels run $41,900. 5 acre tracts drop under $33,000. You're solidly in the pay cash with savings range for people who've been socking away money in a high cost of living city for a few years. Fentress County is opt-out. The unincorporated areas around Jamestown, which is most of the county, treat building codes as optional. Land listings brag about being unrestricted. Same freedom as Oneida, cheaper entry cost. The elevation brings a trade-off. A cooler climate means a slightly shorter growing season, 180 to 200 frost-free days instead of 220. That's still enough for 2 full cycles of greens, multiple successions of beans, and enough root vegetables to fill a cellar. You're just not doing long season heirlooms without a greenhouse. The rockier soil works against row crops but works for orchards. Apples, pears, pawpaws, and persimmons all do fine in thin Appalachian soil. Honeybees love the mountain wildflowers. If you're thinking permaculture instead of industrial agriculture, Jamestown gives you the template. Water runs downhill. If you're buying land with any kind of slope, you can gravity feed from a spring or a catchment tank to your cabin without a pump. Free water pressure. No electricity required. Fentress County gets the same 50+ inches of annual rainfall as the rest of Tennessee. But up on the plateau, you're also getting fog. Morning fog is free water. If you run a fog catching mesh on the windward side of your property, you're pulling moisture out of the air even on days it doesn't rain. People do this in coastal Chile and the Canary Islands. Works just as well in Tennessee. The trade for all this is genuine isolation. Jamestown doesn't have a ton of services. You're driving to Cookville or Crossville for anything beyond basic groceries. But that's the point. You're not buying here for the restaurant scene. You're buying for the silence. Saltillo. Saltillo sits in Hardin County, West Tennessee, south of the McNairy County line. Different soil, different focus. 5.42 acre lots run around $25,000. Not the absolute cheapest, but the soil makes up for it. Hardin County has deep, well-drained, loamy soil that Middle and West Tennessee are known for. This is the stuff that grows soybeans and corn at a commercial scale. For a small off-grid homestead, it means you can grow basically anything. Market gardens, cut flowers, garlic, high-value crops that generate actual income, not just subsistence calories. The growing season runs 200+ frost-free days. You can do spring greens, summer tomatoes, fall brassicas, and winter root vegetables under row cover. 4 seasons of production if you stagger plantings. Hardin isn't opting out. That's the catch. The county follows state building codes, which means you need permits and inspections. But here's why it still makes the list. If you're planning to actually farm, as in generate income from agriculture, you're going to want infrastructure, a real barn, a processing shed, maybe a walk-in cooler. Doing that to code gives you resale value and keeps you legal if you ever scale up and start selling commercially. And Hardin qualifies for Tennessee's Greenbelt Law. That's the Agricultural Forest and Open Space Land Act of 1976. It lets you get taxed on use value instead of market value. If your land is worth $200,000 on the open market, but you're using it as a farm generating $1,500 a year in income, you get taxed as if it's worth $40,000. The math is violent. 25% assessment rate on $40,000 is $10,000. A county tax rate around 1.5% means your annual tax bill is $150. The same land without a greenbelt would run $750. Greenbelt has 3 classifications. Agriculture requires 15 acres and $1,500 of average annual income over 3 years. That's achievable with a 1/4 acre market garden, a dozen chickens, and some value-added products like jam or honey. Forest requires 15 acres and a professional forester's management plan. You hire a forester for $300. They write up a plan saying you're managing timber growth and you file it with the county. Open space is the secret weapon. 3 acres, that's it. You just have to keep it in a natural or scenic condition and file a preservation plan. You're not logging it, not paving it, not subdividing it. The county signs off and your taxes drop by half. The rollback clause is the only tooth in the system. If you change the land use, say you subdivide and sell off parcels or you clear cut the forest, you owe rollback taxes. That's the difference between what you paid under Greenbelt and what you would have paid at market value, calculated retroactively for 3 years on ag and forest land, and 5 years on open space. It sounds scary until you do the math. If you paid $150 $650 per year under Greenbelt, but would have paid $750 without it. The rollback is $600 per year times 3 years, $1,800. That's the penalty for violating the deal. It's not insurmountable. It's just enough to keep people honest. Saltillo's location gives you options. You're an hour from Jackson, 90 minutes from Memphis, and 2 hours from Nashville. Close enough to sell at urban farmers markets. Close enough to drive in for a VA appointment or a specialist if you need one. Far enough out that land stays cheap. Lobelville. Lobelville sits in Perry County, about 10 miles from Linden. The population is maybe 500 people. This is ghost town territory with river access. Land prices mirror Linden. 4 to 5 acres run $30,000 to $40,000. What makes Lobelville different is the community, or lack thereof. Even fewer people than Linden, even less government oversight. Perry County's opt-out status applies here. No state building inspections. No zoning telling you what you can build or when. The Tennessee River proximity gives you water redundancy. Your primary source is rainwater catchment. Your backup is a well. Your emergency backup is the river itself, where you can draw for agricultural use without permits. Lobelville sits on land that's gently rolling rather than flat like West Tennessee or mountainous like the Plateau. You get some elevation variation for gravity-fed water systems without the rocky soil that makes the eastern counties difficult for gardening. The town itself offers almost nothing. No grocery store, no hardware store. You're driving to Linden or farther for supplies. But if your goal is privacy and autonomy, that absence of infrastructure is the point. Nobody's tracking your comings and goings. Nobody's organizing neighborhood associations or petitioning for new regulations. The government's entire job is maintaining roads and processing the occasional deed transfer. That's the level of involvement you want if you're trying to minimize interference. No planning commission, no economic development board pushing for growth, just basic services and otherwise leave you alone. Altamont. Altamont sits in Grundy County on the Cumberland Plateau. Elevation around 1,800 feet, cool summers, mild winters, and opt-out status. Land near Altamont runs 5.08 acres for $55,000. Not the cheapest on this list, but you're paying for proximity to Savage Gulf State Park and the natural beauty that comes with plateau living. Grundy County is opt-out, build however you want on single-family homes. The unincorporated areas around Altamont have the same unrestricted land designations you see in Scott and Fentress counties. Altamont itself has a small downtown, a few shops, a post office, basic services. It's not Knoxville, but it's more than Lobelville offers. You can drive to town for supplies without making it an all-day trip. The plateau topography around Altamont means you're looking at forested land with streams and springs. Water isn't a problem. The challenge is the same as Jamestown: rockier soil, shorter growing season, terrain that makes large-scale agriculture impractical. But if you're prioritizing scenery and seclusion over farming income, Altamont delivers. You're surrounded by state parks and natural areas. You can hike, hunt, fish without traveling. The tourist traffic from the parks means you can sell crafts, honey, firewood to visitors if you want supplemental income. The elevation keeps summer temperatures tolerable compared to West Tennessee. You're not dealing with 95-degree days and suffocating humidity. Winter brings occasional snow, but nothing like what northern states see. A wood stove handles heating, solar panels handle power, wells and catchment handle water. The trade is the same as other plateau towns. You're giving up agricultural productivity for scenery and cooler weather. If you need to generate significant income from the land itself, West Tennessee makes more sense. If you can work remotely or run an online business, Altamont gives you a better quality of life per year. Puryear sits in Henry County, far west Tennessee near the Kentucky border. Population around 700. Opt-out county. Flat agricultural land. Land prices are competitive with Atwood and Saltillo. 5 to 10 acres in the $20,000 to $40,000 range. The soil is rich bottomland loam, the same stuff that makes Hardin County attractive for farming. Henry County is opt-out. No state building codes on single-family homes. Puryear has no municipal zoning beyond basic health and safety. You can park an RV while you build. You can construct alternative structures. You can raise livestock without navigating permit bureaucracy. Puryear's location near Kentucky means you're also near land between the Lakes National Recreation Area. That's 170,000 acres of public land for hunting, fishing, foraging. You don't need to own 100 acres to have access to wilderness. You just need to be close enough to drive there. The town supports large-scale homesteading. Better than the mountain towns. The flat land and good soil mean you can run cattle or sheep on pasture. You can plant multiple acres of row crops. You can scale up agricultural production beyond subsistence gardening. A quarter-acre market garden can generate $10,000 to $15,000 in revenue if you're selling at farmers markets or through a CSA. That income qualifies your land for Greenbelt agricultural classification, cutting your taxes. It also offsets your grocery bill and creates surplus for barter. Livestock adds another layer. Chickens are the gateway. A dozen hens produce enough eggs for a household plus surplus to sell or trade. Feed costs run around $20 to $30 a month if you're supplementing with kitchen scraps and letting them forage. Eggs sell for $5 to $7 a dozen at farmers markets, or you trade them with neighbors for firewood, produce, labor. The trade is humidity and heat. West Tennessee summers are brutal. You're dealing with 90+ degree days and humidity that makes it feel like you're breathing water. But if you're set up with good passive cooling, high ceilings, shade trees, cross ventilation, it's manageable without air conditioning. Tracy City. Tracy City sits in Grundy County, a few miles from Altamont, population around 1,500, slightly larger than the other towns on this list, but still small enough to maintain the opt-out county advantages. The history of Tracy City revolves around coal mining. The mines closed decades ago, but the town retained its infrastructure. You've got a grocery store, a hardware store, medical clinic, more services than most of these towns without tipping into the bureaucracy that comes with larger municipalities. Grundy County opt-out status applies. Land near Tracy City runs similarly to Altamont, 5 acres around $50,000 to $60,000. You're paying for the developed town access while keeping the building freedom. Tracy City also sits near Fiery Gizzard Trail, one of the most scenic hikes in Tennessee. If you're selling the lifestyle to a spouse or partner who's skeptical about rural living, proximity to recreation helps. You're not stuck in the middle of nowhere. You're near natural attractions that people drive hours to visit. The elevation keeps summer temperatures tolerable. You're not dealing with the oppressive heat of West Tennessee. Winter occasionally brings snow, but it's mild compared to northern states. A wood stove handles heating. Solar handles power. Wells and catchment handle water. The town's infrastructure also means you're not completely isolated socially. There's a community here. Small, but it exists. You can grab supplies without a 40-minute drive. You can meet neighbors at the hardware store. If you need that level of human contact, Tracy City provides it without sacrificing the opt-out advantages that make rural Tennessee viable. Sneedville. Sneedville sits in Hancock County, far northeast Tennessee near the Virginia border. This is Appalachian Hill country, population around 1,300. Hancock County is opt-out. The land is cheap because it's remote. 10 acres can run under $40,000. Larger tracts of 20 to 30 acres stay under $70,000. Sneedville offers something most of these towns don't: genuine isolation combined with mountain culture. This is old school Appalachia. People here have been living self-sufficiently for generations. The barter economy isn't a trendy new thing, it's how locals have always operated. Hancock County Hospital is a small critical access hospital in Sneedville itself. 10 beds, emergency care. You're not traveling 45 minutes for medical help, it's right there. The terrain is rugged. You're not farming at scale, but you can run a subsistence homestead with a garden, chickens, goats, and a few pigs. The hills mean you've got gravity-fed water from springs. The forests mean you've got timber for firewood and building. The isolation cuts both ways. You're far from Knoxville or any major city. You're far from airports. If you need specialized medical care or specific supplies, you're making a long drive. But if the goal is complete disconnection from mainstream American life, Sneedville delivers. The culture here runs deep. Multi-generational families who never left. People who know how to can vegetables, smoke meat, split firewood, fix equipment. If you're moving here from a city, you're the outsider. But if you're willing to learn and contribute, that community knowledge becomes accessible. You're not figuring everything out alone. Waynesboro. Waynesboro sits in Wayne County, south central Tennessee. Population around 2,500, larger than most towns on this list, but Wayne County is opt-out and the surrounding unincorporated areas offer the same building freedom. Land near Waynesboro runs $25,000 to $70,000 depending on acreage. You're looking at 10 to 25 acre parcels in rural areas just outside town limits. Wayne County is heavily forested. Timber tracts are common. If you're buying land with mature trees, you can selectively harvest timber for cash. cash. Then use Greenbelt's forest classification to cut your taxes. A professional forester writes a management plan for $300. You file it with the county. Your taxes drop. Waynesboro offers more services than ghost towns like Lobelville or Puryear. You've got grocery stores, medical clinics, schools if you have kids. But you're still in an opt-out county, meaning land just outside town has no state building code. Enforcement. The location puts you within 2 hours of Nashville, Huntsville, and Memphis. You're not completely isolated. You can access urban markets for selling farm products or picking up supplies without making it a multi-day trip. Tennessee's agricultural extension offices offer free soil testing, free advice, free workshops. You mail them a soil sample, they send back a report telling you exactly what amendments you need. You call with a question about goat parasites, they walk you through it. The extension system is a hidden resource most people don't use. Every county has an agent. They're funded by the state and federal government to help farmers, and that includes hobby farmers and homesteaders. The barter economy in rural Tennessee is real. You've got eggs, your neighbor has firewood, you've got vegetable starts, someone else has a tractor you can borrow to clear land. Nobody's tracking receipts. You're just trading value. This informal economy supplements cash income and reduces the amount of money you need to generate. If you can trade for half of what you need, you only need to earn half as much. Clifton. Clifton sits in Wayne County on the Tennessee River, population under 3,000, river access, opt-out county status, and proximity to wilderness. Land near Clifton includes riverfront parcels. 10 acres with river access can run $60,000 to $80,000. Non-riverfront land drops to $30,000 to $50,000 for similar acreage. Wayne County opt-out applies. You're building without state inspections. The riverfront location gives you water access for recreation, fishing, and agricultural draw rights under Tennessee's regulated riparianism. Clifton sits near the Natchez Trace Parkway. That's a historic route running from Nashville to Natchez with protected scenery and no commercial traffic. You're close to a national park unit without dealing with park regulations on your own land. The town itself offers basic services. The real draw is the combination of river access, building freedom, and forest cover. You can buy land, build a cabin incrementally, fish and hunt for food, and minimize cash expenses while living on one of the most scenic rivers in the state. The trade is flooding risk if you buy too close to the river. Tennessee river level fluctuate. You need to check flood maps and buy property above the floodplain. But once you're positioned correctly, you've got water security, food access through hunting and fishing, and proximity to a small town without sacrificing the opt-out advantages. Tennessee gets 50 to 67 inches of rain per year. The national average is 38. A 1,000 square foot roof with a single inch of rain generates 600 gallons of catchment. Do that math over 50 inches annually, and you're pulling 30,000 gallons off your roof. That's 82 gallons per day, more than enough for drinking, cooking, bathing, laundry, and irrigation. Rainwater harvesting is explicitly legal in Tennessee. The state encourages it through stormwater retention laws. No permit required, you just set up gutters, run them to food-grade tanks, add a first flush diverter to skip the initial dirty runoff, and you're operational. Gray water reuse is also legal. Shower water, laundry water, bathroom sink water, all of it can be filtered and used for subsurface irrigation. The Tennessee Plumbing Code requires basic filtration, usually a sand or diatomaceous earth filter. You're not drinking it, you're watering fruit trees. If you need deeper water, wells are the standard. Average cost for a complete residential well system runs $4,000 to $15,000. Drilling costs $15 to $30 per foot. Most wells hit water between 100 and 300 feet. You file a notice of intent with the Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation. $75 fee. That's it. No ongoing permits, no inspections. Groundwater in Tennessee is largely unregulated. You own the land, you own the water under it. The well becomes your insurance policy. Rainwater. Handles daily use. The well sits as backup for droughts or if your catchment system needs repairs. You're not dependent on a single water source. Redundancy keeps you operational. Solar works because Tennessee's not cloudy like the Pacific Northwest. You're getting consistent sun, especially in the Plateau and western regions. Off-grid solar arrays in opt-out counties are unregulated. No building permit, no electrical inspection. You buy the panels, mount them on your roof or on a ground rack, wire them to a battery bank and an inverter, inverter, and you've got power. A basic off-grid solar setup for a small cabin looks like this: 2 to 4 kilowatts of panels, a battery bank with enough storage for 2 to 3 days of use, a charge controller to manage the batteries, and an inverter to convert DC to AC power. Total cost runs $10,000 to $20,000 depending on whether you install it yourself or hire help. Federal tax credits still apply. You're claiming a percentage of the installation cost as a direct credit on your federal return. And then there's Starlink, low Earth orbit satellite internet. As of 2025, Starlink's hitting median peak hour download speeds of 200 megabits per second in the US. In rural Tennessee towns, actual performance settles around 60 to 70 megs. That's enough for Zoom calls, Netflix, online work, telehealth appointments. You're not isolated. You've got the same internet access as someone in a suburb, just without the fiber optic infrastructure cost. Starlink hardware runs around $500 with monthly service at $120. For people working remotely, that cost pays for itself immediately. You're maintaining a full-time income from a property with no rent or mortgage. The convergence is recent. Cheap land has always existed in rural Tennessee. The Greenbelt Law has been around since the 70s. But 3 things changed in the last 5 years. 1. Starlink. Before low Earth orbit satellites, rural internet was dial-up or sketchy DSL over degraded phone lines. You couldn't work remotely. You couldn't do telehealth. You were genuinely isolated. Starlink solved that. Now you've got 70 meg downloads on the Tennessee River in Clifton. You can run a consulting business from a cabin. You can do customer service remotely. You can homeschool your kids with online curriculum. 2. The remote work shift. COVID pushed companies into permanent remote policies. People realized they didn't need to live in Seattle or Austin to keep their jobs. If you're making 80 grand a year working from home, you can do that from anywhere. Move to Clifton, cut your living costs to $500 a month, and suddenly you're banking 6 grand monthly instead of breaking even. 3. The cost of living crisis. Rent in mid-tier cities hit $1,800 to $2,500 a month. Groceries inflated, utilities inflated, insurance, gas, everything. People started doing the math and realizing that a conventional path, renting forever, saving nothing, retiring on Social Security alone, leads nowhere. The off-grid option started looking less like a fringe choice and more like a rational response to an economy that doesn't work for regular people anymore. The fishing on the Tennessee River matters more than it seems. Catfish, bass, crappie. You're not just catching for sport, you're catching for the freezer. A good day on the river can yield 20 pounds of fish. That's protein you didn't buy at the grocery store. Over a year, that adds up to real savings. Living almost free isn't about rejecting modern life. It's about rejecting the parts that don't serve you. Monthly rent, utility bills, building codes written by people who've never framed a wall, property taxes that assume your land's highest use is a subdivision. Tennessee's opt-out towns give you a different deal. You take on more responsibility, more risk, more labor. You learn skills most people outsource. You trade convenience for autonomy. And in return, your monthly expenses drop low enough that part-time work or a small online business covers everything. The 12 towns aren't identical. Atwood gives you the lowest entry cost. Linden and Lobelville give you rivers and privacy. Oneida gives you space and total freedom. Jamestown gives you mountains under 50 grand. Saltillo gives you soil that actually grows food at scale. Altamont and Tracy City give you plateau beauty with town access. Puryear gives you West Tennessee homesteading. Sneedville gives you Appalachian isolation. Waynesboro and Clifton give you Wayne County options with river access. Pick based on what you value. If you need community, choose a town with more services like Tracy City or Waynesboro. If you need solitude, go deep into the Plateau near Jamestown or Sneedville. If you need income potential, choose agricultural land near Saltillo or Puryear. If you need beauty, choose the mountains. If you need water access, choose the river towns. But pick based on research, not fantasy. Visit the town, talk to the county assessor about Greenbelt, talk to neighbors about well depth and internet performance. Drive the roads in winter to see if they're passable. Check hospital distance. Confirm opt-out status in writing. Ask about property restrictions. Look at flood maps if you're near water. The real costs aren't hidden, but they're front-loaded. Land acquisition in the $12,000 to $60,000 range is achievable for people who've saved aggressively. Well, drilling adds $4,000 to $15,000. Solar setup runs $10,000 to $20,000. Septic system installation runs $3,000 to $6,000. Building the actual structure runs $15,000 to $30,000 for stick frame, or $5,000 to $10,000 for alternative methods if you're providing the labor. Total upfront cost $50,000 to $100,000 if you're doing most of the work yourself. That's less than a down payment on a median-priced house in most American cities. But unlike a down payment, payment, it's the total cost. You're not financing $300,000 more. You're done. The monthly costs after that are minimal. Property taxes under Greenbelt and relief programs, $1 to $200 annually. Starlink internet, $120 per month. Propane for cooking or backup heat, $50 to $100 per month depending on use. Vehicle fuel and maintenance. Food you can't produce yourself. Total monthly nut, $300 to $500. Compare that to the conventional path where housing alone eats $2,000 to $3,000 monthly. Add utilities, insurance, HOA fees, and you're looking at $4,000 a month just to exist. That's $48,000 a year, every year, forever. The Tennessee option flips that. You pay once up front, then your recurring costs drop to $6,000 a year. If you're making $40,000 annually from remote work or a small business, you're banking $34,000. That's retirement savings, emergency fund, healthcare costs, travel money, whatever you want. The math works. The law allows it. The infrastructure supports it. Whether it works for you depends on how much you're willing to build yourself, how much isolation you can handle, and whether you value autonomy over convenience. Tennessee positioned itself accidentally. The opt-out statute wasn't designed to create an off-grid haven. It was designed to let rural counties avoid costly code enforcement. The Greenbelt law wasn't designed for homesteaders. It was designed to keep agricultural land from being subdivided. The tax relief programs weren't designed for retirees escaping high-cost cities. They were designed to help elderly Tennesseans stay in their homes. But the side effects are real. These laws create a system where someone with modest savings and a willingness to work can own land outright, build without government interference, and live on a fraction of what urban life costs. That system is still open. The gap exists. How long it stays open depends on how many people figure it out.